Welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Ethan, also known as Climate in Transit, and today I'm joined by my wonderful co-host here, Mr. Nic the Door, Nic Laporte.
Hello and welcome back, everybody.
And we are joined by a guest today. He's been on the show before. We have Ben Durham.
Hello, everyone.
This is the second time, right? So I think it was episode 10. So what are we on now? 51? We're at episode 51.
Yeah.
41 episodes ago, we had our first guest on the show. Last minute, Ben Durham, this guy comes in. He's like, oh, yeah, sure, I can make it. Like a few hours before the show, he's like, let's do it. And he showed up, and it was fantastic. So we're so happy to have you back here. Really
Always
awesome.
a clutch guest here.
Yeah.
I will ramble less, maybe. I say that. It never happens.
So if you don't know Ben, he's a fellow YouTuber. Channel is Ben Durham, where he talks about e-bikes, and he roasts, the premier sometimes of Ontario, which is great, which is something we'll talk about. But yeah.
Absolutely.
What else we got today?
Yeah,
Ethan?
So we got some wonderful updates today. I'd also like to thank everybody in our live chat right now. I believe it's just Austin at the moment and someone else here. But if you want to tune in live to our show, guess what? You can become a Patreon subscriber over on Patreon. And not only can you tune into our shows live, but you also get access to shows early just in case you missed the live show, and you get some exciting other benefits as well too, including access to our Discord. This starts at just $1 a month. I just wanted to let you all know that because, it's always exciting to have a fun live chat here. We've got some great banner in the chat, and one of our great other patrons, Jen Hall, has also joined us as well too. So this is an exciting show, guys. I can't wait to do this with you. But let's get into our updates here.
Yeah, we got some updates. We got lots of news. I'm really excited to talk about a few of these things. But last night, I had a sweet dream. It was fantastic. I had a dream that I got an e-bike. And let me tell you, I have a lot of nightmares a lot of the times. So when I have a dream, and when I have a good dream, it's just great. I wake up so much happier. And this morning, I woke up delighted. And there wasn't too many details. Some of those dreams, they just slip away from me in the morning. But it was this beautiful, big, honking step-through e-bike. And I was just cruising through traffic, just weaving through cars, just smiling and being happy. And that's it. That's the whole dream. But it's a sign. And I think it's coming to the time that I should, think about getting an e-bike in the near future. My legs are being like, hey, come on, man, you can still do it. I can still do it. I've been biking to work every day since my scooter died over a month ago. It's been fantastic. However, it pushed me to get out the door a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think your mind's telling you something there, Nic.
And Jen's really trying to get me to check out the Gazelles, which is totally fair. Classic
Gazelles
brand.
And turns just, okay, I know that your scooter video, you say that you used it because it's portable, shove it on your desk next to it,
yes.
That's good. But the turns, those ones are designed that they can collapse, or they can go on their, you put them up, and then they sit, and they take up next to no space. It's pretty cool. So check those out.
Actual
too, maybe.
bonus, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a problem even with my acoustic bike is just the sheer size of the tires. I think they're 28 inches or something, and I can't even fit it in our utility room because it's just too long. Even on the wall upwards, it's still pretty big. That'd be nice though.
I have that problem with my e-bike too, but it's electric XP, so it's on the bulkier budget end. So you kind of got to deal with that fun little parking problem.
Yeah. All right, Ethan, you said you got something in here.
Yeah, so a quick update for everybody out there. I got a new video coming out Friday on YouTube, so just stay tuned for that. Nothing too crazy. Life's been a little busy, but I'm glad to have a new video coming out soon.
Awesome. And we have to mention here, you're enjoying this podcast. Appreciate you guys showing up. But there is another podcast you can listen to, and I don't know if it's too local. I'm not sure. It does it for me. I listen to every episode. It's called Wheels and Beyond with Ben Durham, and that's Ben's podcast. And let me tell you, the production quality is fantastic. It's really impressive. I had the pleasure of joining you in Springbank Park, last minute thing again.
Always last minute.
But we had fun. It was good to talk in person and meet up there in London, Ontario. But tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so I started it because I realized that I wanted to know more about the community. And everyone, I can make short-form content. I can make long-form content. That's great. And you guys have a podcast, and you cover a lot of different topics. And I'm like, you know what? I really want to dive deep which doesn't always mean the most amount of views because it's less broad. It's very niche. But I want to have, like, my objective is to get kind of establish this after like having started the podcast. Really, like, I want to get to like 100 different people that I'm talking with, and from all different walks of life. I want to keep it as close to less only guys. My real objective is like 80% women on the podcast, because I want to disproportionately represent an underrepresented portion of people who ride bicycles, especially utility biking. So that's been most people are the utility cyclist side of things, which I think is really good because it's less of the overrepresented cycling and spandex portion of the the cycling community. That's what North Americans think of when they hear cyclists, including, and we'll get into this, probably what Doug Ford thinks as a cyclist. So that. And so
Awesome.
really kind of getting to know everyone and diving deep on different topics, whatever they might think is interesting, whether it's mothers and biking with their children and having a front loading cargo bike with 4 children in the front, and then she hits like 50 kilometers like per day. Anyways, there's a lot of awesome people here in London, and coming up I'll be talking with a few people in Toronto and Kitchener, so those are lined up. It's not just going to be London. So,
Spreading it out a little bit. That's awesome. No, it is really fantastic. It's good to hear just from regular people about their experience cycling around London and soon to be, extended area in the southern Ontario. I might have somebody for you, a senior, a woman who's been a lifelong Londoner, who rides their bike in a situation almost daily that I'm like, I wouldn't do that. No thanks. So maybe we'll talk afterwards. We could set that up.
Yes,
I don't know
please.
if they'd be interested, but it would be great. But anyways, if you haven't seen it yet or listened to it, check out Ben's podcast, Wheels and Beyond. It's very good. But we have the story we need to get to. The first one we have here.
We do.
And
this one comes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. This one's coming to us from Ben over here.
Ah, yes. So Bill 212. I made a video recently, but I wanted to take a different approach to it, because we, as urbanists and people who talk about getting around outside of vehicles, we tend to be in a bubble, and there can be echo chambers that happen. And with this video, I really wanted to take an approach of, hey, who's the demographic, who's the listener that is actually the majority, on whether it's unfortunate or not. I really wanted to be real with myself. Said, hey, who do I want to target? Like, this bill, by the way, it's Premier Doug Ford's government, Conservative here in Ontario, Canada, and they are trying to pass this bill. And in the news, it's been, they're going to tear out bike lanes, which they actually will. It's a big problem. It's not like, that's cute, they might do that. No, they're totally planning on it. So it will actually have an impact on the cycling community, especially in Toronto. But it's also province-wide, where they are planning on getting rid of previously installed bike lanes if it took away a lane of motor vehicle traffic, because that's not acceptable, there's problems with that. But okay, here's my biggest problem and why I made this video. The Urbanity, other channels that we probably know in the community have made tons of videos on the cycling aspect to this bill. But that bill, I literally have the papers from that video right here. The ones I went out and Johnny Harris the video out of, made an investigative piece, which was quite fun, I have to say. But this, for anyone listening, you won't be able to see, but it's just a highlighted portion of the bill. It's 1 page out of 22 pages is actually about bicycling and anything to do with that. The rest is all to do with Highway 413. And that's really important, even if you care about just the cycling portion of it, because I feel like the cycling community could have said, hey, we care about the highway portion a lot, because if the vast majority of the populist vote for Doug Ford are drivers, it's like, okay, well, what if we specifically target those who are driving. Like, this bill will affect those people too. It's not just, oh, well, those pesky cyclists are going to lose their lane of traffic. There's all the really good reasons that the news and the YouTube channels and everyone is covering the cycling, the one page, the cycling bits there. It's really important. But to get people on our side and talking about the bill and writing the premiere and saying, hey, this bill is absolutely whack and is way overreaching, to get those people on our side, hey, let's talk to them instead. This is how it's going to affect drivers. So that's what I really wanted to get into in that video. There's my little ramble. I said I wasn't going to. There's my ramble, though.
No, that's what we need. You got to fill the
it's
space.
definitely
Got a
what we
whole
need.
hour. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
exactly.
All right,
But,
I'll talk for another 40 minutes on this. No.
Absolutely. Well, this is the thing. So I love that approach because trying to get to people where they'll actually respond and listen, just listen, is very important. But I'm more and more realizing how difficult that is. And I've talked about this maybe once or twice before. I don't even know if I did on the show, but like one of the things I want to do in my YouTube channel, which I don't think I quite successfully do, is reach the people who might want to listen. Like I've said, my friends and family back in Ontario are vastly, on the other side of this compared to where I'm coming from. How could I talk to them? How could I talk to my stepfather and just get to him to understand where I'm coming from? Just that. And that's so hard to do. And like I've said, I've loved the way that you're trying to approach this, and I'm hoping that it's working. It seems to at least getting some people to think about it. But I did watch a video from Veritasium. I don't know if you know this YouTuber, huge, massive YouTuber, science and education, really entertaining videos. But a recent video he put out just before the election in the United States kind of delved into this, right? So they went and brought this fake data about lotion on the skin, right? We're not talking about murders or anything, but this skin lotion, if they gave it to people, the rash would get better or worse. And they had this proportionality of numbers. And then, or if they didn't take it, the rash got worse or better. And they found that the more intelligent people were, the more the numeracy scale that people were at, the better that they were, they could deduce what the actual answer was, right? Versus people who just saw, oh, this one has a higher number, so that one's probably right, even though it was wrong because it's about proportionality. Now, it was an innocuous thing. It wasn't political. It was as undivisive as possible. But as soon as you just changed what it was about, you kept all the numbers the same, but you said it's about abortion or gun control. The smarter people got, the less likely they were to get the right answer because they were trying to explain away the answers to fit their narrative. So it just made me go, wow, like you could bring all of the best data. Like we know about bike lanes and how it's better in almost every aspect. You could bring all that data to a very intelligent person, but if they're diametrically opposed to you, they are inclined to deny that answer, regardless of the fact that it's factually true, which is just mind-blowing. So I don't know. I'm rambling now.
No. I can go off of that ramble. Ethan,
Okay.
did you have anything before I rambled to his ramble?
No. Go forward. Go forward.
Because it's pretty much marketing. I think that, how political can we get?
Hey, this is radio-free urbanism.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because I don't know if you guys have kind of heard about this, but it's like with the recent election in the U.S., the left almost had a marketing crisis where it's like, hey, talking about too many things, not talking about the people, blah, 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 like for the people, no matter, like, it's interesting because there's so many important topics that smart people bring up, but they need to not dumb it down, but like dumb it down. they need to dumb it down. They need to talk to their audience and think of, hey, what matters to people? What matters to, like, and who are the people? When people are, in this case, I'll get back to kind of my talking points with the video that I put out was like, hey, you're sitting in traffic. I know it sucks. Because that is most people. If that's over 60% of people and they're like, well, I need to drive. It's like, okay, again, a lot of people listening probably know, okay, well, that's because of XYZ and the design choices that are brought on by car-centric infrastructure and development, blah, 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 all of those things. It's like, okay, but if, let's say, the $10 billion that's going to be set aside for Highway 413 and undoubtedly way more, what if that was spent on making public infrastructure way better and adding some lines for rail or BRT, or all of the things that I'm sure we could talk about endlessly. And people are like, well, I don't want to sit on a bus, like a recent comment. Most of the comments on that video are pretty positive. I'm like actually really stoked about that. But then now it's reaching a slightly more broad audience. People are coming with their, well, what about isms? And they're like, well, I need to drive because I need to see my grandmother in the other city and my 4 brothers have cars and it's like, okay, man, like I get it. But wouldn't it be nicer if all the people who didn't have that very specific example were taking a nice, wonderful, easy, subsidized bus that was like taking traffic off the road from other single occupancy vehicles? So it's really that. Endless rambles.
Yeah.
Randles.
No, it's making it digestible, right? Absolutely. And it's really frustrating to see things marketed this way. We're seeing this in Ontario with Doug Ford. And I think in Manitoba, I was on Threads this morning and somebody was talking about the gas prices in Alberta versus Manitoba. And somebody commented and said, in Manitoba, we have a common sense premier. And I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean? You know what that means? And I made my own thread this morning because this is what I thought. I was like, common sense now just means lack of critical thinking. It's exactly like the bike lane thing. The people are like, oh, it's common sense. We need more space on the road, so the traffic's better. Yeah, common sense means you're not thinking about it critically. Because obviously you're like, oh, if we have more space for cars, they'd move faster. Duh. That's not how it works. Nobody's thinking about it. It's really annoying. Anyway, we're all on the same page about
Nick.
this.
I don't know what you're thinking. Just one more lane. Just one more lane. Trust me on this one.
But yeah, sorry. Back to you, Ben.
Oh, no, it's, again, we're preaching to the choir. I think most people listening to this podcast know everything we're talking about, but it's really about kind of changing that from a marketing perspective. And also, I really don't understand how the news wasn't covering it. I heard some comments say, oh, the reason, like on the video, and maybe they have a point to this. They're like, well, all of the news outlets don't want to rustle feathers, essentially. That's not what they said. That's what I'm saying. But like, hey, we want to keep our ad money. So let's make sure that the developers that are in Doug's pocket aren't frustrated by our news reportings. Or they straight up were just going for clicks. But it's like, that's actually divisive when the news networks are supposed to cover like what the public, like the public doesn't have time to read through all of this. It took a fair amount of time to kind of parse this, and it's like,
congratulations, like that's huge.
And it's like, I should have talked to a lawyer, really. I should team up with a lawyer and then have their insights. But like, it's almost all, again, do watch the video. Yes, sure, views, but actually I broke it down. There's like a little spreadsheet. I didn't show the spreadsheet, but I made a pie graph out of a spreadsheet, and I just plugged in the numbers of pages. It was a stupidly simple one. Yeah, if you skim through, there's a chapter heading. There we go. So that's a nice zoomed in version. You can see on the screen now. And it really is. I broke it down. There's a part 1 and part 2 because I really wanted to show the bright red there on the graph. It's a very, very small, I would say like 10%. If whatever that, the math is. If that is bicycle lanes. And then the big bright yellow and pink portions are the Highway 413 and where's the other one? The Build Highways Faster. And that includes expropriations. So there's Schedule 1, it goes over expropriations and stuff, which is super important because they're also like, hey, we're going to take your land, be out by this date, you cannot fight it. Which also, I had to cut this part out just because of the length of 34 minutes was already really long. But wait, did I cut it out? Maybe I did. But if I didn't, then I'll say it now. It's just like, hey, we're going to take the land and no protests allowed. Like, here is a little, I think there was a subsection saying, if you do protest, we get to just relocate you or something. It didn't say that. I forget where it was, but it's like trying to call all of that out. Ooh, one thing. It's funny because I'm doing the exact same thing on screen. I'm like, wait. Is that me now? Slightly different shirt. There we go.
We're confusing the entire audience here.
Exactly. But no, I saw someone else today post. They brought up one more subsection, and I want to bring this up because I have the opportunity because today's the last day for formal or public feedback, etc. And I believe shoot, I'm losing it. I'll have to come back to it a little bit later. Go back on Instagram. There is a section that made it. Okay, that's what it is. In the bicycling section, just that one page. I missed this in my video. There's a little subsection thing that says if stuff that the province does, that, let's say, taking away the bike lanes or doing something else that makes the road more dangerous for people on bicycles, they're not liable. You can't sue the province. So that's in the legislation as well. That's a huge one that I totally missed in this other guy on the Instagrams that yeah. Anyways, he mentioned that, and I'm like, what? So that's a big deal as well. It is a lot about bike lanes, but it is also a lot about Highway 413. They're just lumping it all in together. So
it's insane, though, right? Like about the highways in general. Like, it's a whole thing about the 407 and the government selling that off whenever it was, like almost 20-ish years ago in the late 90s, was it?
Before it was completed, they sold it off.
Yeah,
which was bonkers to hear.
With a 99-year lease, because you talk about this in the video, right?
Yep.
And we know how badly that's turned out. It's been a loss for sure. I don't know. I don't want to get into depth about this whole thing about how people can move around and the way that this titrates traffic in different directions. But building another highway is not going to help north of that one. It's just insane. It's just going to make traffic worse. We're just going to invite more cars. We know that. But as far as bike lanes and the ways to get around it, it's been interesting to see how the city of Toronto's been dealing with it, because obviously the only ones they've mentioned so far are the 3 bike lanes in Toronto that they want to remove, which is Bloor University and I can't remember the other one. There's 2 smaller ones. Bloor is the biggest one. It's massive, right? It spans all of Toronto, goes into Etobicoke, and it goes eastwards as well. But the city of Toronto's actually been voting on ways to fight this, to say, we're not going to do this. If this is going to be done, the province is going to pay for it. They've brought a study forward that's saying it's going to cost nearly $50 million to remove all these bike lanes, because these aren't just like painted bike lanes or, just some curbs that are put up temporarily. Like, these are like extensions from the sidewalk in some areas, like fully grade separated bike lanes. Like, this is massive.
And they also actually had an upper, it could surpass this too, but it was like 48 mil, so 50-ish, and it could actually be more in line with 75 plus mil to remove these. So that's a lot for something that already costs a lot to put in, and removing it won't help.
No, obviously they're deflecting. We've seen from the transportation minister and from the premier himself, Doug Ford, saying, "Oh no, it's not going to cost that much." Right, just deflecting as much as they can. It's really disappointing. Yeah, it's a bummer.
There's one thing. Natalia and I were watching one of the not town hall, the council meeting in Toronto, just remotely. I love how now all of those are now streamed as of, I think, COVID. So it's great. But it was like we were sports fans. It was so funny. We're just sitting there and be like, oh my God, are they going to pass that? Oh my God. Because there was one in particular, and then they did, which was, we're going to put up signs, like if it passed, and it did. And we're going to put up signs saying, this traffic is brought to you by Doug Ford for removing lanes and causing more congestion. And the bill passed, and Natalia and I were like, whoa, yeah!
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
The city council.
It was just like very petty, but worth it. Yeah.
What's going to start happening is we're going to start having like advertisements on the city council meetings for like sports betting.
Yes.
That's how invasive that has gotten.
Oh my gosh.
It's everywhere. Oh my God, we can't run away from it. Yeah. Ethan, do you have anything to say about
just for our American viewers, this is most likely what we're going to see start teleporting across the border here again too, is more active anti-bike policy. It's really more or less been in the US, like mainly just kind of road expansion, but there are a lot of places that have had this infrastructure built in, and especially in like Sunbelt cities and areas that are a little bit more conservative Republican leading, you're going to see more things like this happen. We actually saw something like this happen in Houston, where they removed a bunch of bus lanes from the Silver Line BRT project there. So it's, I mean, Doug Ford got a lot of his inspiration to do all this highway building from a trip to Houston, I believe. So, sorry for setting a bad example.
God, you know
I
what?
cannot believe that spaghetti of a highway that the Houston government was like, this is a good idea.
Oh my God, it is wild.
And Doug was like, I want that here.
You know,
this
evidence
looks
is
so
rolling in, man.
beautiful.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I saw somebody had put up a graph. It was like the cities with the most increased taxes, property taxes, in the past few years, and all of them were all the most car-dependent places. Which is like, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it's just wild to see that we're taking examples from Houston of all places for transportation. You know that the worst thing that has got me upset about this whole U.S. election isn't necessarily that Donald Trump's going to be the president again. It's the fact that Pete Buttigieg is no longer going to be the Secretary of Transportation. Like, he wasn't perfect by any means, but holy shit. Whoever's coming in to replace him is going to be bad.
Be
And probably
prepared for highway
absolutely.
projects.
Yeah, that's where all that money's going. Diverted. Holy shit. Well, strap in, folks. It's going to be a fun 4 years. And thereafter, who knows? Jesus. Should we
Ethan,
move
you were
on?
saying?
Oh, no. Wait, what?
I don't
Oh,
know.
the fun
You were
4
saying something.
years? Oh, no. I wasn't saying anything. I kind of completed my thought there. You know, it's like, oh, well, now it's you can see the American influence permeating into Canadian infrastructure there again, because we're gonna. Hopefully, we don't see it, but we might see some new highways going up and some bike lanes getting removed.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. No.
Yeah. Should we move on to our next story?
I think we should.
Okay. Well, this one is coming from YouTube. A very, very popular YouTuber, someone who I've been a fan of for quite a long time, posted something that got a lot of hate, and it's still going on. Like, it's, I think rightly so. Anyway, this is coming from YouTube. Marcus Brownlee, a.k.a. MKBHD, a very, very popular reviewer, YouTuber for tech. Fantastic YouTube channel, like quality stuff. Huge production. It's amazing. But he released a video that, let's just say it was an ad for an action camera. It happens. Totally fine. However, I don't think it was him, but the editor at least put in a little clip, and I'm just going to play it here first so you can see it, and I'll explain it while it's going on for the people who might be just listening to this podcast. But here you can see in a Lamborghini. He's driving a Lamborghini, and well, let's just press play here and see what's going on. So here we go. They pause the video. You can see that there's on the dash, and behind the steering wheel, you can see the speed of the car. It starts around 30, goes up to 45, 50, 60, 70, 80, 96 miles per hour. And that's when the video cuts, hard cut. So there's something a little fishy about this. And that's because where he's driving, you can actually see signs on the street. One of them is maybe it's a child, slow down, crossing the street type of thing. And there's a speed sign of 35 miles per hour. Marcus Brownlee speeding almost triple the speed limit of 35 in a Lamborghini. May or may not be a school zone. Doesn't matter to me, but holy smokes. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's insanely reckless. Just to state the obvious there, but it really does kind of show you just how kind of car culture has permeated kind of everything, to be honest. I mean, obviously he's driving a sports car, and I mean, when you're driving a Lamborghini, let's be honest, if you want to go fast in the thing. It's designed to go fast. It's designed for track speeds most of the time. And the problem is that he's using that on a school road, in a school zone. Distracted at the same time, too, because he's recording. So not all of his energy is going into actually, I mean, it might be an action cam, so he may not even be focusing on it. But, I mean, there is still, some neglect of the rules of the road there. And, I mean, that's felony speeding. Like, I believe that's reckless driving at that point. I'm not a lawyer, but it can get you into some legal trouble going that fast. But, I mean, you also saw the public out response there. I don't know if you saw the like to dislike ratio on that video, but
I don't know.
Nic
YouTube
has
doesn't
a
let you see
plug-in.
that anymore.
It doesn't, but there's some plugins, and I'm sure you probably had one there, but it was like 50-50 there, and that's pretty egregious for a YouTube video.
That's really bad.
So
Yeah.
it's not great. And what's worse, I don't know if you know about this part, is that I believe before he edited it out, which I don't know if you can, unless you're a top YouTuber, you can do it, whatever. I don't know if he re-uploaded or went in and blurred it with the YouTube tools.
It's shorter. The video is like, whatever, 5 seconds shorter.
Yeah, so he cut it out somehow, file replacement, this, that, whatever.
Yeah.
But before he did, the other one was he blurred the one speedometer, but then the editor was like, they didn't realize there was a second speedometer. So that's why, they knew this was not good. However, they initially blurred the big speedometer in front of him and not the one over on where the glove compartment is, which is weird that it's there too, but why not? Because Lambo. But in this case, hot water. Yeah, you need to know how fast you going. But no, it's a big problem because it's just so car-centric that, as you were saying, Ethan, these cars are meant for tracks. There's very few places where you can actually drive these things to their full potential, ever. Almost nowhere. And so it's just because of car culture, we have these super cars. I've driven some, not a Lambo, but Natalia brought me to a track day. It was fun. They can be fun and dangerous, but that's what tracks are for. You pay the insurance for that. You do all of that. You don't do that on roads. And I think when you get to how famous and wealthy, I would say at this point, he feels like he can. He's empowered to do this on streets. And it's like, no, stop.
It's multifaceted, right? It's the power of the car having that at the tip of your toes makes it very easy to speed. Have you driven any car that's fast? Even just drive a Tesla Model 3, the performance model, dual motor. Holy shit! You could speed in that thing like that. I've done it on an empty road, not on this. But on the highway, you're getting on the highway, gun it. You're at 100 kilometers an hour in no time. I never went that fast, but I would want to. Again, go to the track. But it says also about this road. How is it even comfortable to get up to that speed in this place where there's a sign telling people to slow down? It's 35 miles per hour. That's a big design flaw in a lot of our cities, right? We build for speed because of safety, but we know what happens. It helps people speed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's our road design at the end of the day too. I mean, you said it best there, Nick. I mean, when you design streets the same way that you design fast roads like highways, people are going to drive like it's a highway,
And as much as the speed humps, speed bumps they can be annoying, and you can almost not get past them with a Lambo, depending on how low it is. But you can actually have it so that you can do the lane narrowing. Sometimes that's not possible with school zones because of the buses, etc. They need some room. But you can have very gradual, the raised intersections. I know, very specific to London here. There's one over on Cheapside. No one will know where that is. But anyways, it's a raised intersection. So it is a speed bump, but it's the whole intersection. And that could be implemented here. He would have went flying if he went that fast through a school zone with a raised intersection, because it's the grade differentiation is probably half a foot or so. And so it's gradual. And if you're going 30 kilometers an hour, you're totally fine. But if you're going anything faster, you're bottoming out your car. So that's just a simple one there.
Can't forget things like chicanes as well too, or obviously you said lane narrowing earlier, Ben. But yeah, I mean there are ways that we could fix streets like this to actually fit that 35 mile an hour speed limit. But
absolutely.
Also, at the end of the day, it was Marcus's choice to do that speed. So
absolutely, yeah, it's pretty wild. Have you guys seen that video? I think it came from the UK, and they've done this with the road narrowing. They basically just have these two bollards. And they're, tall bollards, and you can barely fit your car through. And what happens? The vast majority of people driving get up to it, and they go really slow because there's a crosswalk right beside it, right? So it's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's very risky to speed through there. And that's what you need to do sometimes, is make it more dangerous for drivers, and they slow down. Yeah.
They actually have implemented, as much as fake London here gets its bad rep by someone on the internet. It does actually have a few good things like that. They do have those like little, okay, they're the flex posts, but they do narrow, and they put one in the middle, they put two on the side, and now you end up having a lot of people slow down. Some people know the dimensions of their car and get used to it, but for the most part, it has a speed decreasing effect.
Okay, this was another video I saw last week. I don't know where it was from. It looked Eastern Europe to me, but it was like the one I saw in the UK, but they were just like giant concrete blocks, 3 of them. So it had 2 lanes in between these giant concrete blocks, and a lot of people slowed right down, like crawling through, but other people just flew right through it, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, an inch too far one way, and you just killed yourself. Like, it's crazy.
There was one over in Vancouver. I saw it on Twitter when it was still Twitter and not a horrible platform. Like 2 years ago, and it was these massive, similar, like massive concrete barriers, and they're yellow, and it's like, who put this here? It was an SUV stuck on them because they gradually sloped up, and it was like, what? Like, this is unacceptable. Like, how am I supposed to get past this? I was backing up.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, it's like, what? If you can find that, it's hilarious. But it's
bananas,
yeah, it's like, what? How'd you miss it? Like, if you can't see that, then what else wouldn't you see if it was there? Like, a child, or someone in a wheelchair.
That reminds me of another great Twitter interaction about traffic calming. The deadly fixed object
the
one,
DFO,
where my friend on Twitter, my mutual, decided to get into a nice little discussion with a traffic planner about a giant traffic calming device in the middle of a road in St. Louis, and they came in and said, I think this is suboptimal because this is a deadly fixed object in the middle of the roadway that could possibly hurt drivers.
Yeah, it's a common thread, right? I was watching a video this morning by a YouTuber out of Edmonton, and I really want to figure out who it was because I don't want to rub them raw here. I watched their video, and it was very good, but there was a lot of comments that they were bringing up about all of these traffic calming installations that they brought in. Yeah, bike, nudge, nudge. Thanks, Jen. That's who it was. Bike, nudge, nudge. Talking about all these people commenting, saying, oh, this is all really dangerous. It's all really dangerous. Most of it's flex posts, you know. Most of that infrastructure is just flex posts. People saying it's dangerous, ignoring the elephant in the room, the thing that is actually dangerous, actually killing people. It's really disappointing. But we should move on to our next story here.
Right as we go on to that, right after that was people saying, like, it was the next day after that SUV went over, that the driver of the SUV went over that yellow thing. Someone was plowing into a sidewalk, and they hit a tree. And I believe either they hit a stroller or not. I think they were okay, but again, it's like, hey, like, oh no, a fixed object, or it's like the massive vehicles going onto sidewalks hitting pedestrians who should be safe. It's like, what's more dangerous? More
bollards, please. Oh, yes. Like, if you've ever seen videos of traffic violence, of some car going off the road and hitting people, it's horrifying. Like, it can be actually scarring to see it. It's very, very scary, and it happens. People get killed all the time. We had a big story here in Vancouver, and I've talked about it here on this podcast, where a toddler was killed. Her father was seriously injured by a driver going off the road. And it's going to happen again. It just keeps happening until we actually address the issue. But on a brighter note, Ethan.
Yes. So speaking of more recurring stories on this channel, we have a wonderful little update about congestion pricing in New York City. So last we left off, congestion pricing was paused indefinitely by the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. And recently, due to some events involving an election and it not going the way of the state government of New York, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, has decided to reinstate traffic or congestion pricing, or as it should be better known as decongestion pricing, because let's face it, this is going to get cars off the street in Manhattan, one of the busiest areas in the country when it comes to traffic, in an area that really doesn't need more private motor vehicles. So the thing about this is that it is starting at the lowest possible price that they can do it. I believe it's what did you say it was, Nick? $9.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is flexible, so it can go up during higher traffic points. So during rush hour, obviously, it's going to be raised. I believe it's everywhere south of
60th.
I think it's 60th Street. But basically, it's just everywhere just south of, I believe, Central Park in Manhattan. So it's gonna restrict a lot of traffic, or reduce a lot of traffic in that area, and hopefully bring some more funding back to the MTA that was kind of in limbo. The governor of New York promised that there would be federal funding coming in, and with the new administration coming in, it's very unlikely that the federal government will be giving any money to transit projects. So New York State's got to rely on that own source of self-income for projects like the Gateway project to improve a lot of the stations and track around there for commuter rail, as well as the Second Avenue subway.
Yeah, they're suspecting to raise $15 billion. I don't know what the time span of that is, but that's huge. Like, this is a big deal, right? To actually make transit better. We've talked about making the stations more accessible. This was supposed to be part of that, funding that, making, getting new elevators in so that people who have mobility devices can actually access these, just use transit, because that's huge, right? We talk about this all the time. I believe about a half a
dozen stations were actually brought back into having their projects continuing on that.
Yeah, it's a big argument when people say, hey, try biking, use transit. People say, well, what about people with disabilities, right? And that's what we're trying to do. Obviously, there's a lot of people who can't drive, but making these accessible is huge in changing that making that shift happen so people can use it more easily. So yeah, when was it back in June that they decided, or Hochul decided, that they're not going to implement this? A lot of people suspect it was political, to try to sway voters in New York to not vote Republican, but we know how that turned out. So I'm wondering what's going to happen after this gets implemented. So when is this? In December?
I believe it's supposed to be, it's like December 15th, if I can remember correctly. But
we'll have a few weeks before the new president gets sworn in. How soon until, he starts saying, no, we can't do this, right?
That was my immediate thought. I'm worried he's just going to be like, no, just no, axe that. And that's that.
I believe it's already federally approved for this, so I don't think that the federal government has any say in terms of this project anymore.
Yeah. It's really annoying, too, especially when it comes from that angle. People will say, oh, I shouldn't have to pay to use the roads, which is obviously nonsense. We all pay to use the roads.
I already pay to use the roads. Yeah. I pay my gas tax.
Yeah. And it just seems like a lot like what's happening in Ontario, where Doug Ford's sticking his fingers into municipalities where he really shouldn't. Having the president do that would be sticking his fingers into states' rights, which is a huge thing for conservatives to talk about. They love talking about states' rights. Well, let's talk here. This is a state right. They can implement that to make their city better. One of the biggest cities in the world, the biggest city in North America. I think this would be a huge win. So hopefully this sticks. I'm really interested to see how this changes New York City.
Second biggest city in North America.
Is it the second big? Is LA the biggest?
Mexico City's bigger.
Oh, really? Guys,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Mexico City. I'm sorry, Mexico. But when us people up here who speak English, when we say North America, come on.
Tell me about that.
I'll tell you about it.
About that.
What are you, that one YouTuber who keeps saying it like that?
Oh, isn't he out of Vancouver too? Isn't he like the political
JJ
guy?
McCullough?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Anyway. No, what I was going to say though is that this isn't like the entire state. This is just Manhattan. And so people need to understand that, okay, if they don't understand at this point, hopefully they understand when they get charged for it. But yeah, congestion pricing works. Yeah.
All the infrastructure's there, ready to go. So as soon as they turn it on, it's rolling.
Yeah. And
let's
hope. Oh, go on.
I'm just saying, I hope they use it enough to cover the costs they've already invested into it. Hopefully it's in there long enough for that, at least.
I mean, there's going to be more than enough people who need to drive into Manhattan, and especially incredibly wealthy people who are going to, Wall Street and stuff like that. They're not going to care about a $9 charge.
No.
And so then you have and this is why I think, thinking of the demographics, then you have the people who say, hey, well, this is going to disproportionately affect those of lower income who are forced to drive in, et cetera, et cetera. What it might do is change where people live. That's a very large thing to change, though. I understand that, and not everyone can just get up and move. It might change people's jobs, but over time, it has the positive impact of hopefully saving people money, because cars are not. People think like freeways are free. They were called that because they were, I think, federally subsidized initially when they were freeways. And initially, most highways were tolled. And so that's why freeways got their name. They were like, hey, we're going to pave over America and make highways. But then with the freeways and everything else, that's one cost. But then there's the onus on owning a personal vehicle. Like these people who are driving into Manhattan every day, who may be on the lower economic end of things, it hurts them too. So like the taxation, the tolls, hopefully will be redirected, and I think that's the plan, into public transportation and other options for them. So whether those are shuttles, like there's so many other good options, and then using the last mile commuting options of scooters or EUCs, or wait, those are banned. Hopefully those are unbanned. I don't know. There's a lot there. When you dissuade one thing, you can then think about doing other things differently. But if you stay in the lane of everyone drives, then you're only going to think of that as the one solution. That's right.
Yeah. I believe London, the real one, actually has seen its biggest modal shift.
Shots fired.
I know. I believe it's seen its biggest modal shift away from driving and commuting by car into the city after it implemented congestion pricing in its two separate zones. So if we're going to see anything that really boosts modal shifts here, it might actually be this congestion pricing. And hopefully, this has a domino effect on other cities in both the U.S. and Canada that implement, congestion pricing, not just in New York City, but have it spread to places like Toronto or Los Angeles eventually when they get their transit situation solved, or, I don't know, Boston, Seattle, Chicago, Montreal, Vancouver. These are all great places that could really benefit from similar programs at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you look at Lower Manhattan, they've been really working on making it a better place to be. I was there last summer, and the bicycle network is exploding. They have over 2,000 kilometers of bike lanes, and it's only growing. So there are options. This seems like a perfect test case where you have options. Some of the best transit we have in North America. Ethan, yes? Come on.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that one.
One of the top 10 bicycle cities in North America. Absolutely. I would definitely put that there. Maybe even top 5 in my opinion. It's there. So there's options for people it's not like, oh, you can't drive on the highway anymore. You're not like living out in the middle of Houston saying, oh, you got to pay a toll now. And there's no other options to get around. There's ways to get around other than driving. Now back to something that Ben said, when you're talking about tolling people who are in the lower economic end, it's something I think a lot about, especially when people talk about parking and paying fair prices for parking, implementing market rate parking prices. People say, oh, what about poor people who have to drive? That's an absolutely legitimate argument, right? But there's a point where we have to say, are we going to keep digging the hole and making the problem worse for everybody, or break a few eggs in the meantime so that even those people can live better?
There's even another option where, depending on your income, et cetera, we have this thing called income taxes, and those can actually be beneficial. Because you fill out those forms, it's like, how much have you driven? What's your income? And did you add another line item? Yes, more bureaucracy, et cetera. But in this case, it could actually be like, hey, if you have to drive, then maybe you can get a tax break or something. I know that defeats the purpose, but then at least transitions. Sorry, go on.
No. I know that they at least have some sort of stipulation for people who can qualify to actually have that fee reduced. I don't remember what it is, but it's like if you have to commute into there for work and you make, I think, under $65,000 a year or something like that, you actually do get a reduction on prices. And you got to remember, under $65,000 a year in Lower Manhattan is incredibly low.
Mm-hmm. And so there you have it. You're now actually having a tax that does tax higher income earners, which $9 is not going to do anything for. 9 times whatever the 250 working days of the year. Not that much for someone who, I don't know if that's in and out, $9 a day, I think it is. Yeah. But either way, you're now taking the money from the higher earners and allocating it to maybe public transit, etc. So that's how you fund those things.
And Jen says in the chat, how about giving people that can't afford having a car in the first place reliable alternative transportation? Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Right. Mm-hmm. It's more about that too. Like the people who have a car can barely afford it, giving them options, and the people who just can't even afford a car, giving them options. And it's something that I saw a lot in Detroit. Was I remember my friend telling me that there's over 30% of people in Detroit, that's like most of America, I think, don't have a car or can't drive. Right. And the options in Detroit are terrible. It's getting better, but it's still really bad. And that's a whole another situation. But we should get moving on. We're getting long in the tooth here. We got some listener mails. So the first one, Ethan, take this one.
Absolutely. So this comes to us from a viewer named Ryan Wallace, and they said, "Hey there, big fan of the pod. Would like to share some good transit news coming out of Boston that hasn't been getting much coverage. Basically, after decades and decades of neglect of our system, the MBTA, or T, is finally getting its act together and has drastically improved service over the past year. Here's one recent highlight, and the recent highlight is the total elimination of slow zones on the Orange Line in Boston. But after that, they said, in the course of a year, we've seen system speeds improve to the point where the subway is running faster than it has in decades. It's a really positive bit of change, although, like nearly every other system, we are facing a budgetary cliff soon if our legislator can't get its act together. Anyway, thanks for all you do, guys. Love listening to the show." Well, it is really exciting seeing that growth in Boston and fixing the system after a lot of financial issues that it did face. And seeing its reliability improved is huge, and I think that is one thing that a lot of people like to, not understand. It's not the big flashy projects all the time that really make the difference. It's not the new transit lines. Sometimes it's the project that, disrupts service for a while, inconveniences you for a little bit, but when the system comes back, it's better than ever. And I think those are the super important projects for transit. But the real interesting part I want to address here of this, listener comment is just the fiscal cliffs that we see. So we talked about it last week with SEPTA basically falling off its fiscal cliff, seeing huge rises in its ticket prices, and seeing a reduction of service. And the problem with that is because we rely way too much on basically budgetary funding that is not completely confirmed. So these transit agencies are operating on budgets that only last a few years, and then they basically have to get them renewed. There's not a whole ton of long-term funding for transit, which is really, really unsustainable for operations and just long-term planning of transit strategies. It's really annoying to see that, but it's good to see an agency that's actually doing fixes, and hopefully, unlike Philadelphia, Boston can actually get a full-term budget for the MBTA.
Yeah. No, that's great news coming out of Boston. It's a city I'd love to visit again. Maybe top 10, at least what's that? Cambridge? One of the best cycling places. I need to visit Cambridge. But this is great news. I really appreciate it, Ryan, for sharing this with us, because we don't hear a lot from Boston. They're just out there, in New England, just hanging out and having a good time and eating clam chowder.
A lot of improvement. They got rid of all the slow zones on not just the Orange Line.
Yeah.
That was actually a huge mess. They basically brought in buses from all over the continent to do a bus bridge for the entire line for like a month. But they also did it for the Blue Line too, and I believe they're in the middle of doing it for the Red Line. Now they have one other line. It's kind of a shit show. It's the Green Line, and that's definitely an interesting service to say the least. Same with the Silver Line, but that's buses, so we won't even get into that.
All right. Well, we got a couple more we'll get through, so I'll read this next one. Maybe Ben can read the third one, but this is from Skitch. If you had to move to a different neighborhood in your city/metro, which one would you pick? Oh, God. Let me tell you. Oh, okay, I can go. I feel spoiled right now, but I'm like, I don't want to. If I had to move, though, I'd probably move to the West End, which is like downtown Vancouver, close to the beach. near Davie Street, which is like our, LGBTQ street, which is like a lot of fun, lots of stuff going on there. And it's close to Stanley Park. You could like walk there or go for a bike ride around the seawall. It's lovely. How about you? What about you, Ben?
I think my immediate answer, without thinking any more than I should, is Wortley Village over in London, Ontario. So it's a grid neighborhood for the most part, smaller houses and shorter fronts. So you have more density, even though there's still single family dwellings, but there's also like a good missing middle, a good amount of options for missing middle. And so it's a really nice little area. It's a village, Wortley Village.
Yeah, because it used to be an actual like town outside of London. When you look at it on the map, you're like, really? Like, it's so close. But yeah, I got annexed, right? Swallowed up by London. It's such a nice place. I lived there briefly for maybe 6 months. It's such a great little place. What's that cafe? The Black Walnut?
I think so, yes.
That's where I had my first date with my wife. We met up there and had a coffee in Wortley Village. So
wow,
it has a
small world. Wow.
Yeah, special place in my heart.
There we go. Wow. We just learned a bunch. That's very fun.
Yeah.
How about
more Nicolor?
How about you, Ethan?
Nicolor seems like a word. Nicolor?
Yeah.
I am a Swiftie. Ethan just moved to Portland, so
I did, but if I had to move to another neighborhood here, I really do enjoy my neighborhood, and I would say I wouldn't move out of it. But if I had to move to another neighborhood, it'd either be the Pearl District, which is, if you guys don't know Portland, it's just barely to the northwest of downtown. It's where Powell's City of Books is, kind of right over there. But it would either be there, or it would be, if I want to get real fancy, Ladd's Addition, which is a neighborhood that's kind of almost suburban-like, but it was built basically as like one of those master plan communities. It's got like an octagon like shape to it, but it's very, very bike friendly. And yeah, if I had to mix it up, it'd either be Pearl District or Ladd's Addition.
nice. And Jen in the chat says, I think I choose Sunnyside here in Calgary, which if we had Alex on the podcast, he'd be able to tell us. From as far as I can tell, that's on the east side of the city, maybe? I'm not sure.
It's in Calgary.
Oh, it's north. It's just north of downtown, right across the river. Yeah, nice. Okay, and we got one last question here. Ben, take it away.
All right. From listener Jan Hall. If you could invent something to add to your shoes, your bike, or a train, okay, that took a different take there, what would you invent and why? Don't worry,
my
other
God.
people will do the hard work of engineering, designing, and producing it. So thank you for that, because otherwise it would have not gotten done. So, what?
Like, I would get like a pop-up hood for my bike, like a convertible hood. So it's just like, poof. So when it starts raining, you just go, poof, and it just goes right over top you to keep you dry. I'm sure it exists, but if you could just press a button and just like, meow. That's what I would do. That's what I would invent. How about you guys? You got any takes here?
I know it would 100% exists out there. I want like a lockbox trunk, like a big one for like the back of a bike, you know? That's what I want. Nick, you kind of stole my idea there, just mentally. I'm like, I want that for when it rains, you know? Pacific Northwest thought there, but, you know, also protects you from the sun, too.
Yeah.
But having just a nice big, like, trunk on a bike with, a, you know, like a little lock in the back for it would be really nice for just, like, carrying anything and wanting to keep it dry.
That is fair. I have I bring camera gear with me or other things, and I'm like, I would like to have this trunk that has a lock on it, or two, and is...
Or 15, yeah.
yeah, and it's like, you'd have to steal the whole bike, which is also possible, but at least people can't see into it, etc., and it's not like a pannier, so it's not that. But on the shoe side of things, I'll take a different approach. Something... Gonna incriminate myself. Something spiky so drivers would maybe have something more to
Honestly,
think about.
You know, I thought about this recently. I have this utility knife, and it's like a EMS utility knife, so it has a seatbelt cutter, and it has like one of those pointed things on the end to break, you know, the glass, the window.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if you just put those like on your handlebars on the end, so like if somebody drives too close to you, you just like, meep.
Nick's handlebars are up here.
Yeah.
Just scratch the side of a car at least.
To go off of that, this was a very nice interaction. Okay, actually, no. I was biking back yesterday. It was raining. I was coming back from a gig. That's right. I was working on, and I brought my bike, and I do that a lot. And it's a cargo bike. And I'm just biking along. That's fine. In this bike lane on Wavell Street here in London, it's a mostly protected bike lane. Get to an intersection, and this van is totally in my way. They're turning right. So I just, as per usual, I do slightly do something different. If I have studded tires on, I may or may not nudge the vehicle. However, in this case, I just go right up to the vehicle, and I'm like, my light's shining into his van. I'm just sitting there, just waiting, and I just am smiling. I don't get angry or anything. I'm just like, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's a green light. Like, go." And I stare at the traffic, and I'm like, I'm like, "What are you doing, man? Just go. Like, you're totally in my way. You either back up or you go. Like, you're 100% in my way." So that was like I knew where he was coming from, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to go around you, like, into traffic. Yeah. So
honestly, I love your confrontation with drivers, and if you're interested in that, Ben does this kind of stuff. It's really entertaining. I would never do it. You know, my new tactic is if somebody does something to me, close passes or something, I take a second, I take a breath, and if I'm able to like pull up to them, I knock on the window and I just, joyfully say, "Hey, how's your day going?" Just like be friendly to them, and they like they're taken aback. But speaking about studded tires, we have a question from one of our listeners, from Jen in the chat. She says, "Do you ride in winter? And what are the biggest winter riding challenges in London, Ontario?"
that is fair. I think the last podcast that I was on, you had frost biking as the topip, and I don't
did
think
talk about
we
it,
really
yeah.
Oh, we did? Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
So I don't know what I said, but two front studded, already can't talk. A front studded tire does like 80% of the heavy lifting, if that's, because they cost a fair amount, but they last. I mean, I have only ever bought one pair, so there's that. They last a long time, because you're only putting them on for maybe 4 months of the year or something, or less. Don't know. Either way, you just want to not have your front tires slip. And if you can have the back one on and want to swap that out too, go for it. But studded tires are really the best thing, because ice is the worst thing. So to counteract that, that really should get rid of that. Then you can think of cold. But depending on where you live, climate change has already dealt with that. So, so there's that. But then on one of the podcasts, I think it was number 9 on the Wheels and Beyond podcast, we went over a little bit of how, I am forgetting names, how this mom biked throughout the winter, and she said, "How do you not have pogies yet?" Or the bar mitts. And I don't have them yet. I think within the next, once I deal with my projects coming up, over the next few weeks, I'm going to look into those, because we bike year round, and it's your toes and your hands. If you can get those nice and warm and just wear a balaclava or a scarf, then you're good to go. And then again, that's studded tires. I haven't switched over just yet because we haven't really gotten hit. I think Calgary just got hit with snow and stuff, but we have not over here in London. So you don't want to slip. You really don't. That sucks. That can wreck your many months of your life if you break something. So if you just have studded tires on, you're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are huge. Yeah. We've talked about that before, but bar mitts are a big thing, and it's something that I've been thinking about recently too. I shared my story about getting nearly frostbite on my hands on my scooter. It's something that's on my mind for winter. Obviously, it doesn't get as cold here. Like the worst I've had, that one story, it was like -13, which is like really cold for Vancouver. So, yeah.
Pogies are still good.
Yeah.
When you're riding, it's 30 degrees out. You got that wind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. It can help in many situations. Actually, there's somebody in my neighborhood. I always see her bike around. She's always biking around. She has them on year round, and I don't know if this is laziness or she doesn't want the sun hitting her hands or what, but they're on year round. I'm like, hey, if it works for you, go for it. It's cool. But do we have anything else to talk about here on the show? Oh, yes, there was one thing in the live chat that was mentioned. Suggested that Ben, you talk to Patty Waynes, the bicycle mayor of Winnipeg.
Okay, there we go. I was going to ask off the podcast, but you're bringing it up here. I have mentioned, I was reading this, and I saw Patty show up a few times. I'm like, okay. Sounds
She's
like I have
awesome.
another guest.
She's great. Yeah, she's fantastic. She's been on our show once. She's just on John's show, Active Towns, I think. I haven't listened to it yet. But yeah, she's great. She's fantastic. You guys would have a great conversation. But yeah, Ethan, do you want to start the outro to the show?
Absolutely. Folks, thank you so much for watching this show. We really appreciate your support. If you've watched all the way through 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 35 seconds of this show, we really appreciate your support. And if you want to continue that support, just remember you can support us over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month, and you get a whole ton of exciting benefits: live chat access to the show immediately after it's uploaded, and also access to our Discord, where you can talk with us and share all of your cool ideas, and we'll see it right away. But regarding that, thank you so much for watching the show. You can find me at Climate in Transit on pretty much every social media out there: Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads. But Nick, where can the good people find you?
Oh, I'm over on Blue Sky now. I don't use. I left one little note, and that's going to stay there for now because I can't be bothered. Threads, Instagram, especially YouTube at Nick the Door or Nick Laporte. How about you, Ben? Do you want to give us a little plug?
I just got recommended to go over to Blue Sky, so now I'm on there as well. And I'm also on all of the other platforms, either Ben Durham or bendurham.ca, something like that. But you can find me by looking up Ben Durham.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us on this show. It's been really incredible. Folks, thank you so much for watching, and as always, train good, car bad.
And 2 wheels good.
Thanks for having me.